Hello, welcome back to Energy 101. This is our third and final video for week one, and we're again chatting with Dr. Amanda Graham, this time about energy justice. So, Amanda, thank you for being with us again to cover this really important topic.
My pleasure. Thank you, Megan.
So, to start us off, can you tell us what exactly we mean by energy justice?
It's a good question, and it's good to start at that level of the basics. So, at a really basic level, we can think about energy justice as the aim to provide all people across all areas with safe, affordable, and sustainable energy, right? And so the emphasis there being on all people. And we are working and thinking hard about energy justice now, coming out of a couple of recognitions that have been coming to the forefront. And one of those recognitions is that energy is really fundamental for people to thrive, right? So without energy, we don't have access to modern healthcare, modern education, to as much comfort as we might need or want in our homes. So in many, many ways, energy is not just something that's nice to have, it's really fundamental. And so some folks go as far as to say it really is a human right to have energy services to support modern life. A second recognition that has been developing is that the costs and the benefits of energy systems are not equitably distributed across the world, right? And in fact, some communities bear really high burdens for energy, for the provision of energy, and they don't reap as much of the benefits of that. And that's just fundamentally unfair, right? Having that level of inequity in our energy services. And so out of those two recognitions that energy is fundamental and that not everybody has equal access to energy as a service, energy justice then calls for increasing the equity of our energy services, and ensuring that energy services are safe, they're affordable, they're accessible, and they're reliable for everyone, that they are provided by clean energy sources, and that they are provided by infrastructure that sustains the health of surrounding communities. Now, one of the forms of energy injustice that we'll look at comes from communities being situated near energy facilities that are highly polluting. And so they may gain the electricity from that facility, but they are also suffering, if they're in close proximity, to the added pollution and the impacts of that on their health. Right, and so energy justice says we need to equalize this somehow. Energy justice also urges democratic decision making about energy systems and how we manage them, and really fosters the notion that the people who are experiencing those burdens should be front and center in the middle of the decision-making process. They need to be heard as we are making decisions about how to manage our energy systems. So one way to approach energy justice is through some core principles about how we think about justice overall. And so 4 of those core principles are procedural justice, which has to do with how we make decisions, right? What are the processes that we are using to decide where to site a plant, or to decide who gets jobs in the energy industry. A second principle is distributive justice, right? And so where do we have those resources? Energy resources are not distributed equitably. The wind doesn't blow as hard in some places as in others. Not every place is home to a fossil fuel source. And so the fact that energy is not distributed equitably in the resources means that some people are receiving, again, more of those burdens and less of those benefits. Recognition justice is about recognizing the voices that may be unheard in a typical procedure and figuring out how to bring those to the fore so that they are not missed or discounted in a decision-making process. And then finally, restorative justice is really about recognizing that it's not the issue is not just punishing those who have created harm, but making whole those who have experienced the harm. So those 4 principles are some that can help us to start to both diagnose where injustices are happening, but also really try to design and manage our energy systems such that those energy injustices can be minimized.
So when did this study of energy justice start? And can you tell us what some of the roots of energy justice are?
Absolutely. It is a growing field. It really has been growing as a field of study over the last 10 or so years. But it does have some roots. And one of the roots, as I see it, for energy justice really is identifying and understanding systemic racism, right? So systemic racism in our societies, not just the United States, in societies around the world, has created structures by which certain communities are advantaged and other communities are disadvantaged, right? So one classic example of that is redlining, right? Where in this country in the 1920s and 30s, mortgage companies drew red lines around areas that were populated by predominantly minority individuals, right? So black and brown neighborhoods, and indicating that those were areas that they considered higher risk in terms of giving out mortgages or loans for new homes. And we see today the legacy of that impact in how the housing quality and the level of insulation and the level of energy efficiency in those homes is measurably different and lower than outside of those redlined areas. And so a racist policy from decades ago, we still see the impact of that on who has the benefits of our energy systems and who does not. The field of study of this sort of injustice really got started with environmental justice and the movement for environmental justice that came to being in the late 60s and early 70s, headed up in some ways by Robert Bullard, who's often called the father of environmental justice. And environmental justice, in many early cases, really looked at hazardous waste and at waste management and how those facilities were sited predominantly in neighborhoods of minority communities. But the other type of facilities that they really started to see as problematic there were energy facilities, right? That were also predominantly located in low income and black and brown communities, and therefore they bore the burdens of the pollution that those facilities generated.
Can you tell us a little bit about who is impacted by energy injustice? Are there people who are more affected by this than other people?
Yes, and I think that you're starting to probably to hear a theme in what I'm saying here is that what we see in the research is that the most impacted communities by energy injustice are communities of color, low income communities, also the elderly, and individuals with chronic illness or disability, right? And so a few facts and figures there to reinforce. African Americans who earn less than 150% of the poverty level are about twice as likely to have their electricity shut off as white households who have comparable incomes, right? Black, brown, and indigenous communities suffer more health impacts from energy infrastructure than white communities. And two of the impacts that we look at there are asthma and low birth weight babies. And those are both more prevalent in black, brown, and indigenous communities as a result of energy infrastructures. Another indicator, Native American households spend 45% more of their income on energy costs than white households. Black households spend 43% more, and Hispanic households spend 20% more. So these are some examples of where and how we are seeing energy injustice really creating a burden on these communities and constituencies. So one scholar in particular, there are many scholars in this emerging field of energy justice, but one in particular that I'd highlight is Tony Reams from the University of Michigan, who's actually right now he's doing service in the Department of Energy, working on energy justice there. His research in Detroit and in Kansas City illustrates that low-income communities there are predominantly made up of black and brown communities. And what he has found is that these communities that are lower income have a higher percentage of racial or ethnic minorities and who have less than a high school level of education also have less energy efficient homes, right? And so they experience higher energy burdens, which is where the proportion of their income that they spend on energy is higher on average than in white communities.
All right, so there's obviously a lot of inequity and injustice going on in our energy system. So what can we do to try to end energy injustice?
Thank you for asking. Really, the first thing to do is to ask about it, right? Ask who is benefiting and who is bearing the burdens when you are looking at a particular part of an energy system, either one that you're already aware of, or one that you're working to help to design, right? So always be mindful of that benefit and burden distribution and seeking to make that as equitable as you can. Part of that is also in asking who's making the decisions about the energy, that aspect of the energy system, and does the decision making group include the people who are impacted, include all of the people who are impacted by those decisions. I think that we can take heart in the fact that there are a number of organizations that have formed and are forming to provide guidance and support in seeking to make our energy systems more just. One of those organizations is the Initiative for Energy Justice, which was formerly at Northeastern University. And they have been working at the policy or regulatory level to help to assess the degree to which our policies have just injustices embedded in them and what we can do to revise those. Another organization is actually the lab of Tony Reams at the University of Michigan. So the Urban Energy Justice Lab that he founded there also has a number of great case studies to illustrate interventions to try to increase the degree of justice in our energy systems, as well as analyzing many cases where the situations are not just. And I've been really delighted to see that the Department of Energy in this new administration is really taking energy justice seriously. It has elevated that to a level of visibility that we haven't seen before. And one piece of evidence there is that Shalonda Baker, who is a lawyer and who co-founded the Initiative for Energy Justice, was appointed as DOE's very first Deputy Director for Energy Justice, and she brought Tony Reams onto her team to work within the DOE. So we're seeing some federal leadership here that I think could be quite consequential. And I really think that that simply by raising the question right now, early on in our course, we're trying to use it as part of how we frame your understanding of what energy systems are and how to live with them and how to improve them. And so hopefully by embedding it right early on, by asking these questions, trying to pull the curtain back to understand those decision-making processes and who benefits and who doesn't, we'll really be able to start to shift how we're thinking about these systems and make some progress towards more equitable and sustainable energy systems for the future.
Great, thank you. Yes, thinking about and recognizing energy justice or energy injustice is a really important way for us to kind of frame our thinking as we move forward in this class. So thank you so much for that. But thinking about moving forward, what is coming up next?
Well, the very next thing that you get to do is to bring your questions, right? So this course is not just about these videos; it's also about coming together in our and giving us a chance to see and learn from each other and to discuss what we're learning. So bring your questions to our Q&A discussion session. We will have cocoa and cookies, as well as hopefully some great conversation. If you can't make it, then feel free to send us your questions via email so that we can help to make sure that we address them somehow. So looking forward to meeting you when we have a chance to talk.
If anyone wants to learn a little bit more about energy justice and be able to really recognize it and think about it in their lives or in their work, you just launched a course on Coursera called Energy Justice: Fostering More Equitable Energy Systems. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how folks might be able to engage in that course?
I would love to. Thank you. And it wasn't just me. It was a fantastic team of folks at Dartmouth, including you, Megan, right, that made it all possible. And so, yes, we launched a course. It's on the Coursera platform. It is completely asynchronous, which means that you can take it completely at your own pace. And it has more depth on these definitions and principles and forms of energy justice. We have several case studies. So we hear from colleagues at a number of different universities around the United States. And we wrap up by making sure that everyone has a sense of what are some of the tools that you can use when you are going to either address an injustice that you have identified in your life as a citizen or your life as a professional, as well as how to help to design energy systems that are free of injustice.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, hopefully some folks will check that out. Well, thank you again, Amanda. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone at our in-person session on Wednesday. So we'll hopefully see you all there. Thank you.